Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Welcome to, oh my gosh, it is episode 61. Can you believe it? We hope your summer was great and you're feeling recharged for the year ahead. It's go time and we're off to the races. So thanks for joining us for another great school year on the podcast. I'm David Duarte, your host for Culture Before Content. And whether you're watching live, listening, or enjoying a replay, I am so happy you are here. At Music for All and within the Culture Before Content community, our mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music, because that's what we do every day. I don't know why I'm getting so angry. I'm pounding on the table here. So if you're tuning in live, welcome. We're streaming on Facebook and YouTube, and the chat is open. So feel free to jump in, say hello, ask a question, share your thoughts. Your voice truly makes Culture Before. Hey, there's a voice. We're so excited as well. It makes the very special, and we're so glad to have you joining the conversation. And if you're going to miss the live show, no worries. You can listen to audio episodes every Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all your favorite platforms. Plus, you can enjoy full video replays on Facebook. Look under the YouTube on the look under the videos tab on Facebook under Music for All and on YouTube. You want to stay in the loop about upcoming live shows? Just head to the events tab on the Music for All Facebook page and join us every Sunday. And remember, even after the episode ends, you are always welcome to keep the conversation going in the comments, because we really love hearing from you. Whatever you need, just visit musicforall.org/podcast. All right. Well, what did you do last summer? Well, you know what I did? I went to camp. We had an incredible time at the Sweetwater Director Academy during the Bands of America Summer Symposium presented by Yamaha. That is a mouthful. Woo. I got to record 5 live shows. I know it says 5, but it was really 15 live shows. Hey, there I am. I got to talk to live people. It was very exciting. We recorded 5 of the shows for you can listen to them or watch. They're ready to go. Feel free to revisit those special live episodes. And if you haven't already, each one features our Sweetwater visit and genuine conversations with 2 exceptional educators who attended the camp. And if you missed those episodes, go back and listen. They're full of insight and energy. And I got to meet great people live. And again, those are at musicforall.org/podcast. So let's get to the show. That's the best part. That's why we're all here and what we enjoy. So we are truly honored to welcome Kaelinn Casey Ward as our first guest of the new school year. Casey is a passionate educator, a dynamic leader, and a powerful voice for culture building in our schools and ensembles. The work he's done, mainly in creating access, fostering inclusion, and leading with empathy, has made a real impact, not just at William J. Palmer High School in Colorado Springs, but across the broader music education landscape. It's more than exciting to have him on the podcast. It's meaningful. So with that, let's kick off the new school year the right way. Casey, welcome to Culture Before Content, and we are so glad you're here.
Hey, how's it going? It's good to be here.
Oh my gosh. It takes me like a half an hour to get my mouth to understand what my brain is saying, or the reverse. I'm never really quite sure. But thank you so much for being the first guest. How was your summer? Let's start with there. Tell us about you and tell us about your summer. Did you have a good summer?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was short, right? But it was short because I was doing a whole lot of fun stuff. So right now I'm going into year 2, serving at the battalion drum and bugle corps. I do their percussion visual, and I also work with their leadership cohort and their drum majors. So I was on for 2 weeks there, and then I jumped off and was back in Colorado long enough to repack a suitcase and come out to camp.
Yeah. Any thoughts about the summer symposium?
Oh, I had a blast. It was, and I was thinking about it earlier, like it was this podcast that got me out to camp. This podcast and Mike Pote that got me out to camp. Wanting to just learn some more harmony director stuff and having no idea how grand it was, how large scale it was, everything that happens there. So it's a very easy choice to leave and say, okay, cool. How do we plan this for every summer?
Yeah, that's I will tell you this about the camp. I first off, the food was amazing. That's where I don't know why that makes me so happy, but getting to meet like it's so weird hanging around people from the industry, your idols, getting to meet like all the band directors, hearing all the different perspectives and all the different voices. And the other unique thing for me is I'm from the West Coast, and getting to meet a lot of people from the Midwest and the South, and just hearing how same and a little bit of how different it was, but just the interaction and learning from everybody was quite enjoyable.
Oh yeah, I had a blast. I think, like I said, I was there mainly. What drew me was the talk about the harmony director stuff on this podcast. But when I started scrolling the schedule, I was in some percussion classes. I had some friends that were there teaching, and got to kind of like link up with them and see what it was like on their side, and just kind of like really dive into the larger project that is at Summer Symposium. It was awesome.
Yeah, and with all the students there too as well, it was just like fast. It was just music all the time, and I just thought it was fantastic.
Oh yeah, it was great.
Well, let's get on to a little bit about you. So, why don't you tell us? I always say this: culture before content. Everybody that comes on this show, I first off is amazing. And I saw Craig Gustafson. I saw you on there, Craig. Craig was one of my former guests. He was on episode 59. But everyone that comes on the show, I learn more. I swear, I get the benefit of this show more than anyone, because I learn about why their culture makes their band program amazing. And we're talking a little bit before the show, and and I'm just looking at the wall behind you, and I can just see so much dynamic and so much diversity behind you. And I want to talk about let's just start off with the culture conversation. What drives you as a band director? Let's start with that conversation. So what drives you as a band director? What makes you impactful to yourself?
Oh man. Well, I think so. Something unique about me and where I teach is I graduated here. I graduated in 2013. Went off to college and came back. I knew I was going to come back here, and I knew that I wanted to teach here just because of my experience, and then being able to not only give back to that, but to kind of like enhance and continue the vision that my predecessor had was really big for me. Knowing that we're a 4A school in the middle of downtown Colorado Springs, with a demographic that's so, I would say, it changes by the year. All of our socioeconomic status, everything, it changes by the year. There's nothing that is just kind of like flat lines for us of something that we can expect every year. And so bringing not only like access, but just like the idea that excellence can happen in this building, in our departments, that's something that was really big for me. I got to experience it as a student. I got to help with it as an assistant director, as a percussion director here, and being able to serve now as a director. This is year 5 for me.
Wow.
It's just something really cool.
It's funny because I was talking to someone earlier, and like it has been, you are like I want to say the 10th person. I'm making up that number, by the way. This isn't factual. You're like the 10th person that has taught at the school that they have attended, and even I taught at the school. Like that was my very first job, was teaching at the school that I attended, and I think that's partly why culture starts to become the important. Because we know our culture of our school, and when we step into the school that we came from, we have a bias towards what that culture is, and we want that experience to come out with our students. So, what is your school's culture that you wanted to bring? When you took over, what culture was so important that you had to be the director of bands at your own school?
Well, I think it's actually really interesting. There was just one that, like I said, the culture of excellence, but just the community behind it. So my predecessor, I got to have him as a director in middle school and high school. I had him for 7 years, and just kind of watching him not only turn around the middle school program that I was a part of, but turn around the high school program. And it wasn't, we weren't leading with, we're going to go out and we're going to win everything. It was, we're going to start at this foundation, and we're going to figure out what's possible, and we're going to continue to build on what's possible. That first year that I was here, we didn't have a marching band. We had a parade band, and it did, we wanted it, and the students older than me, they wanted it, but the vision was when we came out, we were gonna make sure that we came out the right way and come out ready. And so that first year was just like, let's build. And then that second year we came out, and it was kind of, every year was something different. And every year we were just trying to stack. We weren't trying to go for first. We were trying to go for, okay, what is feasible to this next level, to this next level. And that was, that in itself is a culture, like, in the classroom of, how can we be the best version of ourselves as performers? But something that I really appreciated about my predecessor, now that I try to instill now, is like, how can we be the best version of ourselves just as people? Like, that's it. And how do we just continue to build on that? Because in turn, it makes us better musicians, and it helps us thrive in that way.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. There's a picture. If you're listening, there's a picture that popped up, and I know we talked about this before, but I'm just so enamored with the shoes and the outfit. That just is amazing. The presence that you have in front of your band, I think that's part of what builds that culture. But I was thinking to myself, culture first, music always, and I think part of this is what are the core values that you have that you want to inspire in your students, so let's talk about some of those values. What is like one of the values that you have? Like, what are one of the beliefs that you have as a music educator?
So one of the things that we started a couple years ago, and we're starting to kind of dive deeper into it every year, and I'm cool to share it, as we have our acronym. So it's behind me in like a poster that one of my kids made me, and it's another kid did like a laser engraving, and it's cool to see that they've bought in. But the acronym is WITIAI. It stands for whatever it takes, I'm all in. And that even in itself has a lot of levels as far as like, what does it mean to be all in whatever context you can be? Because even this, so the picture that just popped up, that's my symphonic band. And this incredible program that's growing, like the concert bands are growing, but the marching band I think we're 41. We're marching 26 winds. And so one of the cool things with the acronym and how it kind of like branches out is I don't have all 100 some of my students in marching band. So what does it look like for kids to be all in whatever class that they're in? What is it like? What is it like for my kids that can only show up to during the day band? What does it look like for my kids that are doing, the two bands and jazz band and marching band? And it kind of like spans out from there. So every summer we do norms, and every summer we try to reestablish what are we going to do for this year's ensemble, and what is this year's ensemble going to look like? How do we want to hold ourselves? And so we've got posters back out on the wall, and it's everything from rules like take care of number one, to things like I had a kid last year say that Roblox was life, and we looked at him, and then he gave us this spiel where the head nods were sparse, but there was some legitimacy to things that are just the norms. So integrity, respectfulness. I think the one thing that the kids have really latched onto is kindness, and making sure that we can be a band that somebody just walks by. Whether they're coming into this room or not, they don't feel like there's this weird threshold to cross. We're a group of students that's very approachable, whether in rehearsal, whether in the band room, the way we leave areas, like that's kind of been the big thing that they bought into.
You said two things so far that I'm like, folks, I'm always like typing my little notes over here so I don't forget everything that we're talking about, because there's two things. Number one, this is a question maybe to think about later. It's not really my question, which is, what do you say to a band director out there about creating a volunteer only marching band? Because I know for some teachers and for some directors, that is a scary proposition. We live in a world sometimes of mandatory marching band or volunteer marching band. And I'm just kind of curious, because you have drum corps experience, do you not? And so, yeah. And so like, how did you get, and this is kind of like the circle of life here. How did you get such drum corps experience and then come back to a school with no marching band? And so like, how did you, and then decide, how did I build a band around having it all volunteer? So I guess it's, because you have to build that culture with an all volunteer band quite differently than if it's mandatory. So how did so maybe let's talk about your experience. How did you get into drum corps?
So, and then just kind of looping back. So as a student, This program started with no marching band and then 3 years. So then when I got the job, our marching band was already up and functional. I just also happened to get this job in the middle of COVID, which is like a whole, right? Exactly. Um, yeah, dot, dot.
We all know that one.
So as far as my experience, it really started with something that's back this year, the Big Loud Live. I went and saw that in I think 2009, and was just so enamored, having no idea that the activity even existed. Um, and then for us, we had Drums Along the Rockies at Mile High Stadium.
Yeah.
And so I had gone to those events and watched those, and just, I want to be out there. I don't know. I don't care how, like, I just want to be out there. And I had seen, I think there were, one of my friends just posted on Facebook, because the show that did it wasn't for any other reason than the plumes were neon green. It was Cascades. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then that year was the same year that we followed up. Like after Scades came off the field, the Academy came on the field. And so now we go from like neon green plumes to like fully dappered out tuxes. And I was like, oh yeah, that's it. But yeah, I didn't end up marching until my age out year. I went and auditioned at the Academy in 2016 for a battery spot and a drum major spot, and ended up getting that drum major spot and had a blast. And everything from there is, it was a Facebook post to see if anybody needed some visual staff, and that took me to spending some time with the Jersey Surf for about 4 years. Some of the coolest 4 years that I've ever had teaching drum corps. And then now I'm on year 2 teaching the battalion.
Wow. And that's what because to me, I'm a saxophone player, sadly. And the drum corps world for saxophone players is terrible. I'm just throwing that out there. But how did that experience help shape you as a band director, or what, how has it helped? Because to me, it all comes down to that mentorship thing. But it gave you probably quite the bit, how did that shape your experience to then turn it into mentorship for your students?
Oh man. I try to tell my kids, and they do a really good job of keeping me accountable. And especially this year, we have 2 students that are marching with battalion. But there is a separation between drum corps and high school. High school band is not drum corps. And usually what I tell my students is there's always a comma, however, after that. So it's, high school band and drum corps are not the same. And they make fun of me because in sentences I'll say comma, however, we can hold some of the same expectations of excellence. We can hold some of the same expectations of structure. We can hold some of the same expectations of just procedure, without having to cross that line. And I think not only will the kids agree, because this graduating class of seniors this year, and the classes before, I say, kind of grew up with me as a band director, and got to watch me kind of figure out this gig and figure out not only the program that I wanted, but the type of director that I wanted to be. So they'll definitely tell you that every time I go away for the summer and come back, something new happens in the program. And it's whether it's a different procedure for structure, whether it's some things that are a little bit more organized. And again, just bringing that over of like, we know these 2 things are not the same. However, here are some processes that work really well that can be adapted to high school. And it's not the 6-hour bus ride and 3-hour floor time, right?
Oh, oh no! But I was, oh my gosh, I can't even think about spending all of that time right now. I'm too old for that. But I was just thinking, like some of the things that maybe like discipline, respect, community. Those are my buzzwords that come into my head. That drum corps breeds that awareness in you. And so like, I know how drum corps can be very, we got to remember we're working with people that are all there and are all in, speaking about being all in, but there's got to be a lot of similarity. And then, staying, what I find interesting is that you are still staying in the world and then still teaching high school and bringing some of those things to your students. So I'm thinking, what kinds of things have you brought into that do transfer well from drum corps to high school?
So I think this year the biggest thing that I brought in was letting them in on more of the process and the behind the scenes work. So my staff and I, we would make our schedules and our timelines, and we would meet and we would talk about it. But this was the first year that, while working with drum majors at Battalion, I was in caption head meetings for the first time, and I got to experience how those caption heads kind of interact with each other, talking about schedules, how they flip things day to day based on the needs of the corps, based on the needs of the ensemble. And that was something that I was like, oh, this is huge. This is entirely adaptable. And so when I got back, we started off that first meeting with, I gave my leadership access to our production timeline. Um, and I walked it through with the kids, like, hey, this is, these first few days, this is what we're working on. Here are our end goals. Here are the things we're trying to get to. Here are the resources that we need to kind of like look into before we move forward. We did a joint leadership with one of our other high schools in the district, where we stole some resources from Mr. Jeremy Louie. And he has, like, field reading, all these marching band resources. And it was like, well, why just teach our leadership that? Like, so brought that to the kids and put it as part of our production schedule. Like, I want to be done with setting movement 1 by Wednesday, but to do that, we need to be able to march. To do that, we need to be able to read a field, to know drill. So let's start at the beginning. And it seemed to work really, really well, because I had all throughout camp, that first week, kids were coming up. Are we on schedule, Mr. Ward? How are we doing? Are we hitting the mark? Are we missing the mark? And we even brought them in on the process of how we flipped the days. So we would start those morning meetings and say, hey, this is where we left off today. We really want to isolate, chunk A or whatever. But it's raining and there's lightning. So we're going to have we're going to have a 3 music block day. And then it's, getting together with the section leaders of like, okay, well, we don't want to put section leaders in a 4-hour music block. So how do we, like, what's a good way to flex this? And they, an hour of section leader led, and then 3 hours of staff, or like, how do we put some break in here? How do we put some team building? So just being like a lot more transparent with that schedule. And I wish I could go back and start that process, 4 years ago, because it seems like the buy-in is higher, right? When everybody's on the same page, or I guess when everybody,
What?
yeah, right.
What?
When everybody knows what's going on, or I guess when even on like I guess the things that we as directors want to assume that the kids can't handle, or assume that the kids don't understand when looking at like a production schedule and all the notes and stuff. I think that's a really lofty assumption, because I think, the kids understand a lot more than we think.
Oh yeah, yes they do. And it's funny because you started talking and my brain went to student leadership, but then you started going down the continuous improvement track, which is like my bread and butter for life. Because as I say, the older I get, the less I seem to know, but the more I feel like I'm being successful, because I feel like every interaction I have with people, with students, with mentors, with all of that, I learn more about the process and how to do it better. So every time I try something new and do it more and more, I feel like I'm getting something. But I really want to go back to the leadership part of it, because you said, there's 2 things that I have. It's one, how do you build your student leadership? Because it sounds like you have some. I'm just guessing, but even bigger on that is student voice. Because I'm hearing the interaction between you and leadership, because sometimes there's a lot of teachers. I was talking with this earlier today. A lot of teachers sometimes do try to do everything on their own without student voice, and some teachers love student voice, just because getting the students to do it, it seems to become the more powerful tool. So how do you, what is your student leadership like, and talk about maybe the student voice in your band program?
I think I have some of them watching potentially. They're goofy. They're absolutely goofy. And I love them. But our student leadership is made up, I think this year we have 9 people. And we've run the gamut, and I've run the gamut with some of those unfortunate COVID events where I had, we had a section leader for every section, planning on, an ensemble of 70, and then I've got 16 wins on the field. Like we've run the gamut with how we've done that student leadership. And this year, you've got a flute section leader, we've got a clarinet and saxophone combined. Our high brass section leader is actually just our brass section leader. So she's taking care of high brass, low brass, and she's our horn sergeant. Our guard captain, and then our two percussion captains, and they're awesome. We have our two drum majors. We have one of them is on tour right now at the battalion, and so our other one was hanging out with us through camp, and she did an amazing job. But we start that selection process around like April. It's been really cool because students will just kind of like start voicing their desire to want to do that. As like the marching season ends and we take that really abrupt week break, or 2-week break before we start indoor. Then the conversations start to happen with kids of like, well, how do I do that? Or how do I be a drum major? And those are some really cool things. They'll come into the office and they're like, oh, I want to know. And I'll say, okay, go talk to this person, go talk to this person. When we get to April, is when we start doing the interview process. And that's also kind of changed. The one thing that we've kind of like really settled on is I have multiple staff members that are performing arts and non-performing arts on a panel. And so they have their initial questionnaire, which is their application in their contract that they sign regardless. Everything from whys to scenarios. They have a grade check. They have to turn in their GPA because one of the things that I've been a lot more open with them is, when we're building a program like we are, when we're doing the things that we are, it's time consuming, it's taxing, but they have to be students first and they have to be on top of their grades. And for none other than the teachers know them, the teachers know me, and the teachers know that they belong to me. So I will get emails of like, well, this kid, I see that they have an A in your class, but they're not doing very well in mine. And then like any good band director would, I show up in their math class and I say, hey, what's going on with this grade? And why isn't it taken care of? So we do the grade checks. After they submit that, we set the date for interviews. Last year, I think I had 4 people on my panel. We've had panels as big as 9, and I try to grab everybody that we interact with. So we've had like our office secretaries. We've tried to pull in like our building manager and like maintenance facility head. We pull in obviously our marching band staff, choir director, theater director, just as many hands as we can get on it, in different perspectives. So when our students are answering the questions or going through the audition process, it's not just me, or it's not just me and the staff, or me and the marching band staff that they see all the time. They get to interact with different voices around the building, because these different people around the building see them and see what they're associated with. So that's how that selection works. And then we usually let everybody know. I've gone back and forth. Sometimes I try and I pop it out on social media, depending on where our banquet sits. But we always try to still announce it at the banquet. It just depends. I told them this year I wanted to get a little earlier on it. I don't know if I actually hit the mark on getting earlier on announcing, but I told them that I wanted to. So that's that process.
Let's. Oh, by the way, I saw earlier Linda Pulley said hi. So Linda Pulley was also one of our former guests. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for stopping by on the show. But let's shift gears a little bit here, because we went on the marching band conversations. But let's get on. I want to get onto that culture side of it and get to more of the program. So let's go to what's important to you about being a band director for your students. That's a big question.
What's important?
Let's dive into that culture side of it.
So it's actually really funny. I got this feedback from a student when we were at camp a couple weeks ago that kind of solidified that question for me. My student leadership and I had come to a communication breakdown, and we needed to have a conversation. So they came up to the room to the band room where we were housing, and we had this conversation, and one of my section leaders just had this like smirk on his face like the whole time. And I was, I wasn't laying into him. We were having this conversation. Um, but then the conversation ends and all of them leave. And I'm like, hey, you stick around. And I just asked, I was like, you were kind of like, there was a little grin on your face. You were smirking. There were just some weird nonverbals. Like, can you tell me about that? Like, did I do something wrong, or was this not serious? And um, he said, no, it was just, I understood the message and I understood what you're trying to say. But there's not, what did he say? I think he said, he's like, there's nothing that you could do that would like upset me / hurt me, because I know that that's not your goal. And I was like, oh. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, like, yeah, this is like this communication thing is going to get figured out, and like this problem is going to get solved. But like, I know that you're doing it because you care. And that's why, that's why I wasn't frowning or sad or whatever. Like, this is just something, this is just a bump in the road that we hit, but like, you care, you want to be here. Like, you love us and you just want us to be better. And I was like, oh, like, and so for me, I think that's huge. Like, I think, and I've told them before, like, I really don't care about how much hardware we hang, and whether we're coming in at the bottom of the sheet or the top of the sheet. It's about, can we be better people, and can we be better for ourselves? And then in that, from my context, is, do they always know that I care? And can they always, even if I'm looking at that tuba player that can't play the high note and getting on them, do they know that I'm not saying, I need you to play this note because you need to play it and be better, and that's all I care about? But it's just like, there's feedback, he still cares, we're good. And that's been huge for me, because that's not something that I've been actively like working on. It's just been something that drives me to do what I do.
Yeah, but don't you think that part of the being a band director is, your success kind of comes from who you are. And I'm not sure that, we don't control, like, today I'm going to be this person and go out and this is the result that I'm going to get from being this person. So like, we all kind of go like, hey, this is working with my students. And like, and you said it, nonverbal communication. I think that's like part of my charm is, to me, words are confusing. We try to use them to communicate, but then they sometimes don't communicate. They just, and I always say to the students, I'm more interested in the action than I am in the word. But we need to use the words because we're trying to get the action out of us. And I'm looking at your program. You've got your contraband, you got your jazz band, you've got your marching band, and so and that goes back to like, well, if you're putting your jazz band together, that's a whole separate mindset than marching and contraband. There's your contraband, that's a whole different mindset. But I think that who you are, whether it's how, because it comes down to how do you treat students, and one of the things that I learned was you treat students the way that you want to be treated. And again, that empathetic part, sometimes we forget that when we're a teacher, and then sometimes we're trying to get something to get done. But in the truth is, what's the bigger message? So, me, the bigger message is, I want my, and you've said it over and over, I appreciate it, because I'm not out there to market. It's neat though, the hardware will come regardless of what. You're not out there, and you're not competing to win, you're competing to make that possible. And that's what I hear from you, is that you are constantly wanting the best of yourself. What do you say to that?
Well, what's it called? I think, first of all, I was getting a little bit of weird audio from you.
Oh, sorry about that.
Just a little bit. Can you run back the last question?
I know it really comes back to like the person that you are in front of your students is who you're trying to get. How do you be intentional with getting what you want out of your students, I guess, is my bigger question.
Man, I think that it's in the same vein of just like waking up and not deciding like, I want to do this today, or I want to be this person today. I think that I've been really blessed in this program that, like I said, some of those seniors, this class, the classes before them, that have kind of like grown up with me as a director, trying to figure out, who I want to be as a director and what kind of program I want. It's just something that I've been blessed for them to not necessarily like latch onto and buy into, but they've allowed me that space to figure out what works, whether I was working on something or not. and then we've been able to just ride with that. And so we will have rehearsals that are super intense, and we will have rehearsals that are super goofy, and um, it's everything from we don't have AC in our building. We just kind of pull whatever air, right? Yeah, so
I
it'll
can't
be
even think right now.
we'll have some rehearsals where we'll just have to stop, and I look over at my percussion section, and I'm like, please go look at the thermostat, and it says it reads like 89 or something like that, and we just we have to hard reset the rehearsal, um, or that's what starts the goofiness, and it's everything in between. And I think that again, they've allowed me that space to figure that out. And it's like we've run the gamut. There are some times where I will come out and we have work to do, and they know that we have work to do. I know that we have work to do, and we're gonna get after it. And then there's other days where I just like to be silly, and I'm I, some way somehow like one of those like plush like basketball stuffed balls have like made it into the classroom, and I'm like trying to make it in my tuba. Um, and again, like they've just like it's all in the vein of getting things done, but it's just like, yeah, they've allowed me the space, and we've kind of allowed each other the space to not only be goofy, but to be serious, to be intense, to be mad, sad, hurt, all in this room.
Yeah, but I think it's really hard sometimes to build that relationship with students, because it does take some trust. It takes some, actions.
Yeah.
I'm sure as a teacher, we have all had our moments where that's, not our proudest moment, but we've also had, we've got to build that trust up with the students, and I'm laughing because I'm watching in the comments as some students are chiming in. But that just shows, like I said, there's, Mr. Ward. And so like, to me, you have to be building some of that relationships. Do you have any intentional relationship building that you do, or is it all natural?
I think what I've tried to do, and this kind of just happens with whether I'm going over to middle schools and hanging, I try to like, that is probably the number one thing that I try to work on every year, and like try and up how many times I can get over to middle schools. But like, I'm not even there. Sometimes I'm not even there as some of my middle school teachers will say, like, I'm not even over there to be helpful. Like I'm just there to hang, or I'm just there to meet the kids, and just kind of, get to know them, what they want to do. We have one of our middle school feeders are like super sporty kids. And so that's, sometimes that's the only conversation I'll have with a kid in an audition is like, oh, tell me about track, or tell me about this, or tell me about cross country. Oh, okay, cool. But you still want to do jazz. Okay, let's figure it out. And then when we get to the school year, now it started because of some scheduling conflicts. But I like it I try in the first 2 weeks to try and hear everybody. And it doesn't matter what they play. Usually I ask for some scales, but it doesn't matter what they play, what level. I just try to get them into this office and hear them play. And sometimes it doesn't even do that. That doesn't even happen. Sometimes we're just talking. And I find that it helps me kind of get to know my students a little bit. It helps me keep myself kind of grounded and pretty humbled at the fact that not kids, right? It's cliche. Kids' lives don't just like start when they walk in the door, right? Like everything that comes in, or everything before they get into our room, usually comes in with them, and like making sure that that's always on my radar. And some kids want to share that. Some kids don't. I don't pry.
Right.
Usually it comes out after a bad scale or a botched scale. Like, oh, it's just right. And I say, okay, like, great. Like, let's not worry about scales today then. Like, let's worry about what you're worrying about. So I think it's the first year after COVID, it felt pretty intentional of like really trying to make sure, again, like my predecessor and I had worked really closely together. The minute it was like a year and a half after I graduated, 2 years after I graduated, I was in teaching his percussion. And then I was writing his percussion, and then I was his assistant director. And so why it had to be so intentional is because all of that rapport that I had built with the students. Well, then when I was teaching at an elementary school beforehand, I taught at that elementary school for 8 months. COVID happened, and then we did this really awkward transition that we weren't planning for, right? As far as like the transition between my predecessor and then I was, boom, airdropped in August as the new director of the program. So a lot of it had to be intentional at the beginning of just like not only meeting the students where they were at, but knowing that there was a lot of things that they wanted to do in the program, and how can we make, again, like everybody around the country, right? Like how do we go back to band?
Right.
Um,
Did you start the year that we came back, or did you start you were the first teacher after they came back from being gone for so long? Because that's exactly when I took over, and it's always like, hi, I get to meet you, but really I don't know any of you because I can't see half of you right now, and trying to form relationships and and just managing the fact that you all haven't been in the classroom, but beyond that, I think that's always going to be a part of the conversation for a while. Like how COVID is our moment for this generation of us music teachers. But do you feel like, showing up at those, for the students outside of the classroom builds a different relationship inside of the classroom? And does it impact it?
I think it impacts it pretty positively. I think one of the comments that read below the screen, one of my guitar players was, he just graduated, but he was playing a gig this past spring, and I wasn't able to stay for the full gig, but I was on my way home, so I at least I rolled in to say hi, and it was cool. It was I was watching. I like I said, I didn't get to watch the full gig or watch him start, but I got to see him in his element, and it's he's not in jazz band. He's not in the jazz band right now. He's in doing this open mic stuff, and it's really cool, and it's super interesting. So being able to show up for him kind of like that. We've had kids that are in sports that we try to show up for, or at least if I can't show up, I try to remember to ask them about it. And so, how was your soccer game? How was flag football? How was basketball? How was, just something? Because when you're, right, when we're running indoor, winter guard, all the things, you don't get to everything. And so I try to just at least try and show up in that way. But it's actually, I didn't go with students, but students had seen me there. I'm a really big Tyler, the Creator fan. And so I had been at one of those concerts, and there was one of my students was also there, and so that was also something to talk about when we came back to the classroom. Oh my gosh, it was such a fun time. So it's proven to be really cool. I think by nothing other than coincidence, there's a lot of things that they're into that I'm also just into. So it starts some cool conversations. It starts again, it takes us out of the classroom. It's really cool.
It's funny about this. I'm just going to take a little tangent here, but it really is it's relative. But I'm just thinking, we've spent all this time, and we haven't really talked about much music education. We've been talking about all these things about what influences the students and the culture. But I kind of want to go back to we haven't really talked about the music side of what makes you successful, because we were talking beforehand about I'll let you tell the story about how your state has shifted, and then we can bring. I would like to, because I don't want to not do that part of the conversation, because it's the same thing. I need my guests to have you twice, because we're never going to get through all the things I want to talk about, and we spend 45 minutes getting to know each other, and then it's well, now I have questions, and so let's talk about a little bit about the Colorado, the change that's happened in Colorado that we talked about.
Yeah. So in our regional and our state concert band festivals, last year was the first year that we kind of piloted a state list. And I think for me, I won't say I wasn't not understanding, but I think that when the list rolled out, there was nothing later than the year 2000. And something that's really big for me is just the way that we program at Palmer. We program
that's the part I wanted to get to.
Yes,
talk about
we program a lot of underrepresented composers. It's something that I was, again, really, really blessed that my students kind of bought into, and they were down for. It wasn't something that needed a whole lot of rollout conversation. It was something where, again, being as blessed as I am to be transparent with my students, it was just a class period one day that I was like, there's good music. There's good music by composers that don't look all the same, and I want to explore that. And my kids at the time were like, "Sweet, let's do it." And so we had done a program. I think the 2 years after COVID, we'd done a program entirely. All the pieces were underrepresented composers, and it was a blast. And so what we did kind of from there, it was just we're going to riff on that. And my students started finding pieces, and what about this one? What about this one? And they kind of help set the program every year. So that's something that we do. We do a listen, and I will bring my pieces and they'll bring theirs. Something really cool has started to happen. We actually, because we have chosen this road and because we program so many underrepresented composers, my students are like rediscovering the like tried and true composers. So like we'll do, I have like a list of some of the pieces we performed, but we'll do those pieces.
I would love to hear some of the pieces that you've done, because here's the thing that I was thinking to myself. It's almost as if, and you just said it, it's almost as if the tried and true composers are going to soon be the new composers, because those of us who do underrepresented composers or marginalized groupings, it's not only is it bringing a whole new set of music to the genre, but it's really creating the culture that I believe in. That, and you said it earlier, good music is good music, and we've been avoiding it, I think, as a music education society. I don't think it was intentional. I just think it became something that changed. But I would love to hear some of the pieces that you played, or some that you plan to play.
Yeah. So we've done. I like wrote out a list of just like of some of the fun ones we've done. We've done Dystopia by J. Coles. We have a plan. My wind ensemble and I have a plan for tackling Requiem for the Unarmed by Kevin Day this year. We will dive in and we'll see. We've done pieces by Elijah Dutton. So we've done Nostalgia in the Air and Stillwater. We have a plan this year to tackle Florence Price's Dances in the Canebrakes. We've done Los Banditos by Quincy Hillard. We started on our Latin music. It kind of, I won't say it's a unit, but there's a piece. It's called Ritmos de la Teoría by Victoriano Valencia. It is a 10 movement piece. Every movement is standalone. You can do as many or as little as you want. But what's interesting about it is that there's a YouTube playlist where it talks about the style, the region, why, how to interpret. It's super educational. And so one of the things that we started last year, we started with the first movement, Raspa, but we're kind of taking it and doing a piece a year. We have a really cool Latinx, Grupo Hispanidad, our Latin dance group here that we collaborated with. We supplied the music and they choreographed. So it's a relationship we're looking at continuing and how we kind of move through this Latin music unit. With that state list. So this year the list is expanded. And then last year it was only if you qualified for state, you had to perform something on that list, at least one piece. This year it's anybody going to a regional, if I remember right, has to perform at least one piece from the list. So what we found last year was a piece called Fuman by Hiroshi Hoshina. We've done Omar Thomas's Shenandoah, and then there's another really cool piece by Sarah Palermo called Digging on Her Grave, 2 American murder ballads. It's very Americana, like very Westernish. But just like fast forwarding into this list stuff, it's cool because my students, we have I would say they have 2 takes. So one, again, good music is just good music. And while we're rediscovering the tried and trues, they'll bring things that I haven't heard of, and they'll say, I see like this person, it's awesome. This person looks like me, or right, this is me doing this this composition. And that's what drove the whole project in general. Was we need to be able to program things in our classrooms for the students that are in front of us. And I know that argument goes both ways, But then to the other side of that argument, if your students all look like one thing, then what are you doing to expose them to other perspectives?
Well, I think we have to be intentional with it, and I have a unique perspective. I just because I've lived in, lived in several parts of the country, and things look different and sound different everywhere. And I think sometimes that we forget that it creates more awareness for especially music, and I love to think of it in terms of like just, I mean, we had the first take for me is like just being in jazz band and being a concert band, just to start it from back when I was a student. That was the big change right there. Cause I always hear, well, this jazz is different. I'm like, style is more than style. It is also culture. It is also representation of what's important and why it's important. And one of my stories goes back to the Star Spangled Banner. I had a foreign exchange student as my cymbal player back in the day, and we went to go do the Star Spangled Banner, and I assumed that he would know where the cymbal crashes go for the Star Spangled Banner, and did not. And I think that was my cultural awareness of like, I had to realize that I'm living in this tiny bubble, and I had to get my own mind to think outside of that bubble, that just because I know the music doesn't mean others know the music. And that has translated into a larger world. But I mean, I'm going to have to go back to this recording, and I'm going to have to take every single piece that you said and like type it in the chat. I really, really wish that we had like we all created a list, because, and I was just thinking about, on your list for your state, hopefully they will update it with things or like you could submit things to put on the list,
Yeah.
and get some of those things. But, I was just trying to think of like, what was some of those pieces, what impacts you when you listen to a piece, or do you have a selection process? Is it just a lot of listening? Is it friends? How do you come up with the list that you gave?
So again, that list are things that we found, and I'll say, the plug, Murphy Music Press was huge when I was just going through and listening to pieces, and just kind of like trying to find, again, is in a time where, before that list, in a time where it was just really noticeable that we were programming the same things by the same people. My knee-jerk reaction was going the complete opposite way, and so I was just looking for those, and that's how we found some of them. But now, like I said, a lot of the times my students pick the pieces. I have a few in there that I want them to listen to, and that process sometimes is just, again, going back onto Murphy, or sometimes like this past MEA, I heard the University of Northern Colorado perform Dances in the Canebrooks by Florence Price, and it was gorgeous. And so, that was something where I reached out to the director and was like, please. And it's, and then I share it with my students. They are always kind of like, unless, and again, it's something that I'm blessed with, unless I have to kind of make that case, I'm like, I really want to do this. How do you feel? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. Like, they are sometimes my filter. Like, I'll run the piece down and they'll say, I don't know about all that. And it's cool because that feedback also has some progression in it, right? So like my freshmen, well, they don't want to play anything slow. They're like, no, we're good. My middle band, they're like, okay, like, the critique starts to get more refined. Like, oh, I like this color, or I like, it starts out fast and then goes slow, or the flutes have something really cool here. And then like my top group, like you really hear that like refined type of feedback as far as like, oh, like the color in this and how they talk about the piece, how they talk about the feedback, or how they give feedback to the piece. It's not just like, oh, I don't like it because it's slow. They'll say, oh, well, this, it seems really redundant that this melody in the clarinets happens like 6 times or whatever, and you'll get the percussionist like, yeah, or there's nothing that really engages us. And then even in those conversations, if it's something like we did a Joni Green piece that this past year, I think it was called In the Stillness. It was a lot of textural percussion, and so that was something where they were like, yeah, it's cool, but I don't know if there's a lot. That was something that we got to kind of engage in conversation about, like, okay, it's not very flush of percussion, but you get to put a prayer bowl on the timpani. And they're like, okay, I'm in. So it's that part of the process of selecting rep has been really cool to see how the conversation and like what my students like and dislike kind of evolves as they go through their time in the program.
Well, there's also my feeling too is sometimes we have to like have our students do music, even maybe whether they like it. You know, there's sometimes like I always say that we
Yes.
have to do stuff that maybe you don't like at the time. Because the other thing that I've learned over time is they may not like it because of the like you say it's slow, but then it becomes the favorite piece of the year, and then you create the connection to why the piece is written, how the piece is written. There's stories behind. There's so much in there, and you
Yeah.
want to hear my scary thing? We've been going 55 minutes, and I just realized that like, oh my gosh, we were going to be hitting. See, and this is why I keep saying we need to have like the show where everyone comes back for the second time and we can talk about some of those things. I really am going to go back and list all those pieces that you mentioned in this thing and probably type it on both of those streams. But like I said, we are reaching the end of the time that we have together. So I don't want to sell anything short, but I do want to go, you know, someday would love to go to every single state list and you know, find a way to see if we could like update it or like find a way to modernize it or, you know, make it there. But, you know, you've had a ton of comments from students, by the way, on this. And I think that just speaks amazing to you. And I didn't even get to half of those things, but, you know, let's talk a little bit about how to get a hold of Casey Ward, Kaelinn, I should say.
Yeah.
Like maybe let's tell us your email, tell us your socials, go for it.
Yeah, so our program social is just at WJP Band. I have my teacher Instagram, which is open to all. It's at Teacher with Sneakers. The like few non-band things that I do are collect sneakers, and so that account is full. Yeah, that account is full of like all things and successes, celebrations of our band. They've gotten to meet my daughter, who's 2, so there's a lot of her on there, and then there's just some really bad golf content and my shoes. So feel free to like jump on that. My email is my first last name Kaelinn.ward at D11. And again, same thing, very open. Would love to chat with anybody, whether you have ideas, feedback, anything. It's been really cool to be here.
Oh, yeah, and I just want to say it's .org. So just in case you're listening out there, it's Kaelinn.ward at d11.org. Was that right?
Yes.
That was pretty good because it flashed by, and then I didn't want to lose track of it. But I cannot thank you enough for being here today and being the first guest of I guess it's not really a season because I think we have a season, but like, you know, we started halfway through the year on the first year. This is the 3rd school year that we've been, but you know, it's the beginning of the year. We're all in that whole like, you know, whites of our eyes, it's, you know, and sleep patterns are all messed up and I hate to say it, but it's 75 degrees here today. So, you know, if the AC goes off, I won't notice it too much. But sorry, it'll be hot next week. But thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been truly a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been the coolest experience.
Well, let's do it again sometime.
Oh, most definitely.
All right. Well, we are so grateful you joined us. We'd love you to share this exciting podcast on your social media. By doing this, you'll help us spread our message and connect with even more wonderful teachers who could benefit from tuning in. And you heard it. He went to camp because he heard it here. Well, depending on whether you're listening or watching, you can always find us on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other major platforms. Just go to musicforall.org/podcasts. You remember, you can always reach me at david.duarte@me.com. Super original. But I'm David Duarte. Thank you for being a part of our culture today. Thanks to my team. And I can't wait to see you until next time. See you soon.